So I'm Josh, Kutz-Flamenbaum. Hello everybody, how are you doing?
Good.
Yeah, good. Day 2, post lunch. Try to make it a little exciting. It's somewhat dry topic, but anybody go to the keynote this morning? I had to miss it, but it was good. Day 2 keynote. Okay. I don't know if you happened to be here last year. I gave a similar talk, and it was the last talk of the day, and I ended up going really long. So I'm going to be very mindful of not going over my allotted time. So if I'm speaking very quickly, going through things quickly, that's why I want to be mindful of time. But basically, my story is that about 2 years ago, I started really embracing Angular as my modernization strategy. I work for Bumble. It's a cosmetics shampoo and conditioner company, and it's basically a small niche within Estee Lauder Corporation, a huge company. So I'm very much in my small niche of apparently a $30 million business. It's still just a niche, but what I use ColdFusion for is the B2B channel within the one brand Bumble. So that's salons throughout North America that are ordering products at a wholesale rate to then sell within their stores. They go through this site to place their wholesale orders. And it's a ColdFusion site. It's been like this for about 10, 12 years or so when I first started. It was back on CF7. But so by embracing Angular as my modernization strategy, I've had a lot of good success. The main upgrade is launching this new wholesale shopping system that replaces the very legacy form that was there prior and is now much more organized, and it breaks products down into categories. I think it's the depth of it, so there's things that are broken. But if you go into the sections, it's very interactive. When you go to add in elements and quantities, it tells you right away what you're spending. And when you make updates, the UI updates right away. The other big thing was to make it mobile friendly, which having an AngularJS front end really helps with, but it also becomes a lot of CSS type work and some JavaScript. So I'm just briefly showing you how the site looks on a mobile version. It does shrink down to a smaller format where you can just browse it through tabs. And so it's a similar, it's using Angular components, just sort of packaging them up in a different way if you're on mobile versus on desktop. So that was a huge improvement. The other big thing was creating a graphical interface to update that inventory system. Before we really just had a flat file that did tie into the database. But I also made a graphical interface for somebody to log in and actually upload material codes and things like that. And so this part is an Angular version 8 application just on the admin side, because basically my experience has been that the AngularJS stuff that makes a lot of sense, but the Angular 8 part has been pretty tricky. It's a different animal than the JS type. So I've gotten pretty far with it, but it's definitely a slow going. The nice thing here in the user interface, you can just drag and drop to reorder, and it will change things. So that's, with that, I'm going to go back into the regular presentation. Just want to give you some of the background. Let me just show you right in the admin. You can add things that images now, which is huge for my profession. It's all about visual contribution, things like that. So that was a huge win. It's just, as I said, the Angular stuff, I was not really comfortable pushing out the newer for the newer version of it in production. And so where we are, here's my slide for the state of JavaScript right now in 2019. And you can sort of, all right, let me try this pointer here. Let's see. Right, okay. So here's over here where we are, 2019. You can really see the pink is Vue, the yellow is React, and this is a highly unscientific chart of what repositories that people have starred in GitHub. So, you know, who knows how unique it is, who knows how self-selecting it is just by GitHub users. But it tells a pretty interesting story that for somebody who's starting now, they would come in and say, okay, what's popular? Well, it looks like Vue is on top and React is on top, and then down here, okay, that's where Angular is. But then if you're back here, you know, if you started in 2016, 2015, you just would have heard about AngularJS, and maybe you would have known about React, probably not Vue, and then this new Angular comes in. So, you know, by starting it when I did, I really liked the way Angular works and working with it. But now, you know, if you were to begin in 2019, I think it's pretty likely you're not going to choose Angular. And there's a lot of reasons for that. You know, those two, Vue and React, you can still use those just by dropping a script tag into your HTML page. And Angular has a much bigger footprint. It requires a console, a command line build system, and it requires rebuilding all of your HTML. So, keeping that in mind, I'm really focused on why you would want to choose Angular. You know, it's definitely still out there. There's still a lot of people on the system. And I don't mean to trash the other two at all. I think they're great. I think if you're making progress on them, more power to you. But so as far as why you would want Angular, number one, the ecosystem, right? And that's all the other things out there that work nicely with Angular. So over there, material, that's Google Material Design. There's a whole component library you can just download and start building apps that look really nice and have that consistent UI behavior and paint and click. Stat Blitz, that's if you want to start coding it in the browser, and we'll build the system right in the browser and give you instant results. Tools like CodePen and JS Fiddle, those don't really work so much with the new Angular anymore. I've got NPM up there because you do need to use NPM with Angular. I mean, you can also use those with the other big frameworks, but you start to tie into the whole ecosystem of the other JavaScript development out there, the libraries that are out there. Angular University, you know, there's thousands of hours of training materials and courses to learn this stuff. I don't know how much you can see on the next graph, the fast and flexible Angular UI components. That's something called from Legion, and that's like a whole suite of components and visual styles that you can just purchase and add into your project. So if you know you're set out to build an executive dashboard and it's got to look great when it's done, you can just start from that. And of course, you know, I believe they have a product that they have the same things as also. They have a Vue edition, they have React component. So it's something you can't do. It's just pointing out what is out there. The next compelling thing, and this is what I really like, is the tooling and the developer experience. I don't know if DX is something you've heard before, but a lot of this comes from the TypeScript language that Angular is actually written in, which is a typing system on top of JavaScript. I'm going to jump into that and do a live coding of that. But so with TypeScript, you get a lot of IDE support. TypeScript sort of enables the IDE language support, so VS Code is very heavy into it, but also WebStorm. I'm not sure about Eclipse. I sort of suspect that there's some good libraries for doing TypeScript, just because there's a lot of similarities with Java, with the syntax of TypeScript. And then Angular Augury, that's a plugin or an extension into Google Chrome that lets you debug a running Angular app as long as you're in development mode. And ngBook, that's a really great resource out there. I think that's like $80 for the PDF, but very detailed, hands-on component those are some selling points. The next thing is this RxJS, which is Reactive Programming extensions for JavaScript. I do intend to spend a lot of time in there because it's the key part of Angular, and it's really different from any other JavaScript that I've done in my career. But it is a very new programming paradigm that if it's something that you like and you take to it and you want to do more, that Angular would make it be a good decision for that. But then also, the external decision criteria out there may be outside your control. You may have to start a new job where everything's already in Angular, or for me it could be a very corporate decision that somebody at the top comes out and says, we just want our whole company front end to use Angular rather than having different frameworks, different libraries within the frameworks, things like that. So I talked a little bit about me, but I work remotely from Pittsburgh, and normally the first thing, next question when I say I'm from Pittsburgh is if I'm a Steelers fan. And if you're from Pittsburgh, you know there's really only one answer to that question. So, sure, yeah, I'm a Steelers fan. I'm not a huge football fan, honestly, but it is nice when they win. Which they did that Monday. Any Bengals fans? Any Cincinnati? No? Okay. So I actually had 20 years of web development, which sounds like a lot, but I kind of imagine in this room it's maybe the middle type of term, or not an outlier. I have a Master's of Science in Information Systems that has sort of come back and helped me analyze these things and understand this from a business context, but also from a computer science context. Wife, 2 kids, and 1 dog. So I have 2 daughters too, so if you have additional sympathy, I would probably take that. And as I said, Bumble, that I do it all remotely. And I'm really the sole engineer for the meeting. Okay, so this is the big picture of what I've been doing. Splitting everything into where CF does the back end, Angular does the front end, the user interaction is all with Angular. That's where the user in the browser or mobile browser are. Angular and CF talk to each other through HTTP request response. I'll also show you some WebSocket stuff in there for two-way communication. And so the different responsibilities here is Angular is dealing with your application state, your user interface, your views, form validation, business logic, and CF is really persistence, security, business logic, compute resources. And you see there is definitely some duplication there in the business logic that I just found you have to have things in 2 locations at this point. Okay, so just to define Angular, it is a complete web application framework. It was written with the intention of being super fast, kind of using future technology, and very much a mobile first type of package. It uses TypeScript, which I'm going to spend some time on. It was Angular 2, officially released September 2016, and then since then they've really just been calling it Angular. The version is version 8, and it seems like there's a lot of changes there, but there really isn't because they're on a 6-month release schedule where the numbers change twice a year. But if you look at code from version 6, 7, or 8, it's all pretty similar. It's an open source framework, but it is sort of heavily sponsored by Google, and there's just a lot of the core team works for Google, so it's very much influenced and something that the direction of Google determined is baked into Angular. And those guys they're focused on the next billion web users across the world. Okay, so TypeScript, which I'm going to show you, this adds type annotations to JavaScript. It includes primitives like your string number Boolean, and then we now have classes to aggregate those primitives and make our own types. This is adding strong typing support on top of a weak Dutch type language, but it definitely makes the code easier to write and to read later on. Enables the support of the IDs. It was originally created by Microsoft. I find it really helps when you passing your data model objects back and forth. And here's a quote from a few years back that I really like. We love, this is from Brad Green, one of the core Angular people. We love TypeScript for many things. with TypeScript, several of our team members have said things like, I now actually understand most of our own code because they can easily traverse it and understand relationships much better. And we found several bugs via TypeScript checks. Okay, and so it's also written in a very in a newer version of JavaScript. Basically, ES5 is in 2009. That's what you need to run for IE11. But so with TypeScript and with transplants, you can write latest and greatest JavaScript now, and the compiler will turn it into something that is working on all browsers. Okay, so let me do a little demo, and okay, so I got everything in this one command box. Okay, let me know. Is this big enough? Should I? This is control. Zen mode. Okay, alright, so let me just show you this very basic ID example. Is that big enough? Can you see that? Yeah? Okay. Okay, so as I said, we now have classes in JavaScript, which makes me pretty happy. So I'm going to make the world's smallest application here, and it's got to be a to-do list. And the basic element of that is our to-do, which really just has a title and a complete flag. So now we've got classes, they come with constructors. And I'm going to pass in something, but I'm going to make this optional. And this doesn't have a type, so I'm going to use any. Now, because this is my constructor, this this is sort of a little shortcut in JavaScript that when you do that logical and, obj and obj.title, it will return, if it's true, it will return the second argument there. So this is a way to, in the constructor, is populating class method parameters, instance variables. Okay, and so if we have a to-do, we have to have to-do lists.
Do you need an equal sign?
Oh, thank you, yeah. So we can see that very clearly. The editor is flagged that. That wasn't intentional. I was thinking about putting in some bugs, but okay, so that's better. Maybe squiggle one away. Okay, so our to-do list is in the whole to-dos. And how we do that is we tell it that we reuse the class we just made, and we use this array notation. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just automatically set it to an empty array. And then, in order to get anything in there, method, this part is really just to-dos dot. Okay, so VS Code is coming in there and knows I'm writing TypeScript, so it's giving me all the methods. It knows that this is an array, so it knows that I've got array methods, and I believe I want push because this is JavaScript, so it's not append. Push RTM. Okay. So now to use this, we have to do one equals new, passing in here, title. Not equal to this. Let me see the editor giving me that feedback right away. And it knows what I've written there, so it knows it's got an add. It knows the right, it accepts the right type. Okay, and then just to show something here, let's just output this whole thing. Okay, so now as long as I go into that directory. Okay, and I can, TSC is a compiler. Compile the TypeScript, which creates JavaScript, and then I'm just using the node command line to run the JavaScript file. Okay, and that's the output I was expecting to see. It's sort of a nice version of spitting those objects, spitting those class, the string representation of our object model. Now back up here in the editor, and look at what it created, which is TypeScript.js. And okay, so here we go. So here's the var, that's JavaScript ES5. Function to do, because there are no classes in old JavaScript. So it's created as a function. Same deal for our to-do list. And look where the add method went, onto the prototype of the to-do list function. So that's the backwards compatibility. Now the nice thing about that model I just showed you is that we really can take that and just drop that into your basic garden variety Angular app. So I'm going to open this in terminal, and I'm going to do npm start. Okay, which is calling ngserve. I just saved some parameters in my package JSON file so that I give it its own port. So this is going to start compiling. This is compiling a separate application that I already wrote. This area from my deck. Okay. If I gotta enlarge that, is that?
Probably. I can see it.
Hold on. That's that. Ooh. Right. Okay. So here's the app. It's got more functions to it. But again, when you add. So this is the app you're just looking at, and so you saw how I've written that to-do model. Here's the class. I just changed it to to-do.model.ts. It's imported into Angular. It's used. A new one is created in the component. It's populated in the init, and then the methods that you access with these buttons are just mapping into the methods on the to-do list class. Now, let me show you one interesting thing here. Let me show you how this looks. The view template. Okay, so this is defining the view you just saw. So this is ng4, this is the way you iterate. And I'm calling get to-dos over here. So I'm saying for each to-do on the to-do list, pass it into another component, pass it in like that. This parenthesis, that's how you capture the events coming out. But with this get to-dos here, and all I have to do is hit F12, and it takes me right back into my control. This one has a console log statement. You sort of expect to see it just reading the variable, but I wanted to add a log here so that you can see about the change detection. Do you have any guesses as to how many times that console.log runs when you first start up this application? You might think it was just once because it's only in there once. But if you come back and look at it, you see 1, 2, 3, 4 times. You clear that, mark complete, ran another 2 times. Add that to do, ran another 2 times. Even this trigger here that does nothing, that fires the change detection. That's just a caveat that I wanted to mention, that whenever you put a binding into a view like this, an expression into a view template, that's going to encounter the change detection. Okay, so that's TypeScript. Okay, so components, I showed you a few components. I'm going to show you more there, but here we're the to-do list, which includes the to-do sort of display component. The great thing I find is that the mental model and the design of the application can quite closely match the component tree structure. So you can really have these components that match up your mental model of the application, and it makes it kind of fun really to know that the components are matching the way the app is. You think about the app so that when you have to plan out future changes, you're not overhauling things. They really facilitate reuse and calculate complexity. You know, if you wanted to make that display to-do item crazy and have lots more functionality and display logic within it, have it all be contained within the to-do display. Change detection caveat. The idea is you have a smart container and a dumb presentation component. This is kind of a nutshell, a very common layout for Angular apps, where you have a container component over here and its own view, and the container component is talking to a service. And in my example, I just had a simple model class, but in a real application, you would have services that would be single views in your app. That's what the container would talk to. The container would get data, it would pass it down to a view a presentation component. Whatever the presentation component did to it, the events would come back out and be tracked by the container, and then the container would handle those. Okay, in the change detection, there are ways around it. Let me just show you visually here. Here's the component tree. This is like our model of our app component, passes to-do list, passes to to-do item. Each one of them has a change detector. And so if one thing is changed, then the whole tree then has to be changed. So that's what you're seeing. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of switch gears and jump into reactive programming, which is its own ball of wax for sure. Programming with asynchronous data streams. There's a good resource, the introduction you've been missing. I got a link in that. Reactive programming is a new paradigm. RxJS is the library extensions for that in JavaScript. The idea being you start thinking of everything as a stream. Here's a comparison. Okay, I don't know, is that big enough? The first case is traditional JavaScript, where the idea being, this is how you would allow at least most 1 click per second with plain JavaScript. The idea of reactive programming is all about flows of information, click streams, asynchronous data pulls, timers, set timeout, things like that, that are interactive and reactive. So in your top case there, you set these variables up ahead where you capture the date and time, and then you have a listener, and within the listener, you have to record the new time and compare it and see did it meet, did it not. If it's greater than the rate, then you process the click. Down below, you just import these libraries. You use from event, which creates an observable that I'm going to talk about, and then you open a pipe and you add in a throttle time operator, and that operator takes care of only allowing 1 click every 1,000 milliseconds to come through. So it's using that type of built-in functionality. Okay, so observables are quote, lazy push collections of multiple values. They fill the missing spot in the following table. So in the table we've got function iterator for pull, and for push, promise, and then observable for multiple. The idea being when you write a function, you call that function. You're saying, okay, function, do something. Give me the result back. Comes right back. If you do a promise, you're creating a promise, and then you're waiting for when the promise is done, then you can do a .then, and then your code runs. That's the idea of push, where you set it up and you wait for the promise to push back operation to you. And an observable builds on this, and it is for multiple values. All right, I gotta go quickly because I am running out of time, but they are very heavily in Angular. They're based on the observer pattern from Gang 4, and they are all about decoupling one stream from another. I'm personally still getting a grip on it, honestly. It takes a long time. But you're going to see them in the HTTP client within Angular. There's something called an async pipe that will actually, you can just pass an observable over to your view and let the view handle it. Event emitters, which is reading a clip coming out. There's a whole reactive forms, which you can create a model for your form and then basically just listen for changes to the whole form or to form elements and react that way. And then there's something called subjects, but it is a huge new API surface. Here is the pattern from Gang 4. And I also plugged in the head-first design patterns. They have really good explanation. Just think of it that we've got concrete observer A and B down there, and these are classes that care about subjects. But the idea being we want to decouple the relationship from our concrete observers to subject. They're not talking directly. They're not saying, hey subject, what's going on? Give me an update. No, what they're doing, they're calling register observer, and they're passing themselves into subject. And subject is keeping an array of all of its observers. And then when the subject says, when something happens, I'm going to call my notified observers, and each person on my collection, I'm going to call their update. So that's the subject pushing that out to the observers. This is the RX class diagram. It's based on that, but it's different and it's pretty crazy. But there's an observable has a dot subscribe there. A subject has all of these methods, but it also has a dot master because a subject is like a read and write observer that you can send things into while you're also while somebody else is subscribed to that subject. Yeah, here's more of the syntax. And it's really about learning these operators, typable operators. So let's see an example. Okay, so this is a YouTube search. I really learned best from examples. I don't know. It's nice to get the background, but. Okay, so while that's going, I'm checking my time for 3 minutes, okay. Yeah. Am I on the network? No. Still building over here? Yeah. Yeah, there's a build step for Angular, get away from that. It's kind of nice to be able to build your JavaScript files. It's got an HTML checker, you can worry about that syntax and making it out of the way. Okay. So this is a very basic demonstration of observers, and it's actually calling a ColdFusion endpoint. So it's using a YouTube API. What 9 times out of 10, when I'm on YouTube, I'm looking for a Stephen Colbert video. Let's see what we get. Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. All right. Definitely not suitable for work to click on these, but. So if I go into the network tab, what you see here is the first request, the queue value was ST, and then, the spell was right, and then STP, and then ST. So there's an observer on that search box. The search box itself is being turned into an observable, and then within the observable setup, there's a debounce time. So it's not reading every single thing that I type. It's not like an on-change event. It's smarter than that. is listening to that, but it's got that delay built in so that it doesn't search with every single change. And then what you can see is, so I had written STEP, it started the research, then STPH, it canceled it, went to the next. These were all canceled until when I had fully written out the word Stephen, that search worked, and that one came back, but the 3 prior ones were all canceled. So that is how the observable is set up to fire in here. That might be too tiny. Show you. Okay, so this is what's running within that search box. It's looking at the native element, the key up event on that. From event is an operator. Pipe is the RxJS syntax for working with that. It's mapped, so it gets the value out of that. Map is a lot like array.map, where you apply a function to each element. So that's how we sort of get the value out of that. Then it goes through a filter to avoid anything that's not a string longer than 1. Here's the debounce time. Okay, this loading, that's what's sending a true value over to what's listening for it to show the spinner. And then this next map actually does the search, sends it to our YouTube service, and runs search on the query. Then there's switch all, that's what does the canceling. And then you see down below, here's the .subscribe. Without the .subscribe, this would never work. So in this version, it's all embedded right here. That's why I like it as an example. The subscribe gets the results and passes those results to this results event emitter. The search itself is kind of a standard Angular pattern here, where it calls the http.get with this query URL. And the search tells you what it's returning. It's returning an observable of an array of search results. The .pipe here, that's how we build out, that's how we convert the JSON that's returned from the search into our type-scripted type. So yeah, I mean, that's a ton of code up there versus if you just wanted a promise that had one value, you could just do it that way. I mean, because the HTTP, it's just running once. You know, it's in a loop there, but it is just running once. It's not multiples. Here's the back end part of the API, and I mean it's an example, so it's not it's kind of silly to proxy your requests to YouTube through a different back end, but it does have the advantage that you can keep all of your API keys totally private on the back end. But the idea being you accept a parameter up top, you call into the request to set your header so the course is going to work, do some stuff, and then down below you return JSON coming out. All right, this is a huge list of all the operators in RxJS. I don't really know half of them. As I said, this is a stumbling block in a lot of ways. But one nice way to begin to understand is what's called marble diagrams, where you have the incoming stream on top, the operator, and then the outgoing stream. So here's the bounce time that only fires every 20 seconds. So the A makes it through, B, C makes it through, D makes it through, the B got filtered out there. Here's the switch all that we used after the HTTP call, and that was basically saying A makes it through, B makes it through, C does not, because by the time C is there, there's a new, this top stream has fired, and there's a new value, and the switch all is only going to return the new row values. And then map is just a one-to-one transfer. So here's the idea of a basic CRUD service in Angular, where each of your component methods, this is the service class. Each of your service calls returns an observable either of a single entity or a list, an array of entities. I mean, we'll just touch on this a little bit, but APIs in ColdFusion, you've got a lot of choices there. This is not, I'm not ranking them or anything, I'm just saying there's a lot of different flavors out there. For me, what I've been doing is just .html files wrapped around my existing functionality, and they're called by Angular. So that's how I rewrote the initial site. And then I do framework 1 for the new stuff. The reason I like that is because you can really define your own routes and create a very RESTful, resource-oriented type of API. So here's something for called a new biz application, new biz app. And there's basically just this one endpoint, the new biz app URL with a bunch of different either actions or list, get, create, the product methods there. Oh, right, here's the back end. And here's actually the TypeScript data model. I don't know how well you can see that, but it gets pretty complicated. Actually, what I've been doing a lot is creating a pretty simple SQL structure with an ID and a few key fields, and then just one big text area blob on the SQL that I've then stored JSON in, and really letting the TypeScript define the data model as it changes. So that if I need to add a field or something in my UI, I just go ahead and add it, and I know the TypeScript is going to update and save the latest model. I mean, the only issue is if you've already got stuff saved on production, you need to accommodate that. But as far as developing a workflow, it's really nice to not have to add fields and just have a NoSQL added into your SQL. Okay, that's my framework 1 preferred architecture. Oh, right, this is sort of the core bare bones .cfml type API. Okay, so I do want to get back to observables with the time I have left, just because they're interesting. I don't know, they're pretty different from other stuff out there. There's a distinction within reactive programming about hot versus cold streams. A cold stream is one that you have to subscribe to make it work, like an HTTP versus hot. The default limit that I've been showing you is just a cold observable, and it just returns once. But observables are built for repeated value. So is there something more interesting from the observables push that we can do? And one thing that I've been exploring is the idea of using observable as a data cache. The idea that you don't need to pull that data on each view, you can store it within the application as JavaScript. So this is sort of a basic data cache where you define a variable data cache with the type observable, and your HTTP logic says if that's not set, then I'm going to run, but I'm going to save it as this parameter mapped out, and then publish, replay, and ref count. This is what turns a cold observable into a hot one that can then be shared by, if component number 2 says, oh hey, I also want get data with cache, it's going to get it, the observables are going to actually share what they've already created. And this becomes very useful. The trick over here though is that how would you update that? Right? There's no, if the app is running for a long time, there's no real mechanism for getting in there and changing that other than hitting refresh. So here's another thing I'm playing with is the idea of an update trigger. This is a data subject, which is a behavior subject, which is a type of observable, a read-write observable. So what I'm doing is, that's up at the top there, and then switch map switches over to the cache logic. The idea being that I can trigger that data subject externally down below here. I invalidate the cache, and I call data subject.next. And this method, this body in here is listening to the data subject. It's going to run with every change. Let me see if I can show you how that plays out. So this is the controller that calls that data service that get data capture trigger. And it saves it just saves it in a parameter that ends in $sign. That's just a convention within reactive programming, putting $sign at the end there. This is a listed variable. And then in my component, I've got that same variable that I'm going to pass it to. This is the pipe in Angular. I pipe it to the async pipe. And the async pipe is actually what does the listening to that observable. Yes. Okay. So deep somewhere within that async, there's a .subscribe in there. The idea being you have to call .subscribe in order for these things to run. Okay. So here's the demo app. So if I navigate over to test on my router, now I'm on a different route. That component's gone. If I go back, you see that it already has data. Let me just reload this first. Okay, so I called my backend. My data is just 100 numbers. Return that. Data works. Here's the numbers. I passed it into a math component to do some math on it. And by the way, I called it a second time, and it also displays there. So now if I trigger the subject, calls out, does a request, and it updates. You can tell it updates. This one, median 51. We do a trigger. Yeah, median 51. Okay, so it's definitely working. That's good. And it's definitely only calling it out once, even though it's shared in 2 different locations. And if I go over to test, and I go back at home, it's still there. It might not look like a lot, but this is, I think this is new, where your UI, your component does something, triggers your service that returns an observable. The observable goes out, gets the data, brings that in, and pushes it up to the view. And it could be in multiple views. You could be observing a data set, and you could have a view that's showing a list, and a separate component that's got subtotals below. But by the virtue of the service updating it once, both of those components will be using the same service. In Angular, services are singletons, so you don't have to worry about multiple copies of your data floating around. Okay, that's the switch map that basically turns 2 observables into 1. Okay, so then the other thing I wanted to play with was WebSocket. The idea being that that's a hot observable. A WebSocket is something that is always running, and it's up to, and its data is pushed out to the client. It's just always running. The client doesn't necessarily know that it's getting the first value or not. That's something that you have to manage. That's the difference between cold and hot. Let that go. Okay, right, that's just sitting there. And then over on the CF side, if I start the WebSocket, okay, that's just really running the loop. Okay, this is getting data here. These numbers are actually coming from the WebSocket. I'll show you that. Pushed out. By virtue of my app being there listening to the observable, it's already getting the data. I'll just show you what the WebSocket looks like. It's really just a big loop of counting up numbers and publishing that out. Just really a proof of concept here. When I first created it, it was a Saturday morning. My daughter came and I said, "Well, why are your numbers counting down? They should be counting up." So that was easy to accommodate. And then she said, "Oh, are you making an app that's going to help me go to sleep?" As part of our bedtime rituals, I help her count to 77 or 100 and stuff like I said, no, it's not actually, that's a fun idea, but the audio isn't working. But each number is then actually passed into, there's a speech synthesis HTML5 API that will have this very Stephen Hawking type voice come out. But I guess, well, if I unplug, maybe you'll hear it. Okay, so I'm wrapping up here. This is a WebSocket. It doesn't use the ColdFusion JavaScript. It really just uses the subjects of the observable library, which are designed for this type of functionality. It binds to the WebSocket library, and then when a new message comes in, it's going into the subject.next. So my goal here, and it's nothing I've done yet, but is to have, to combine those last few things I showed you, where the service facade gets its data and has a trigger, and the WebSocket is also listening. And if there's a change pushed out, if there's like a notification pushed out on the WebSocket, that would then trigger your front-end API to then go and get fresh data. The data would come and pull into the application. And here's an initial approach of the broad API backend. And then down at the bottom there, that's the web service published to just say, hey, this resource was updated, I don't know if you know, and they let the app decide whether it's going to pull in an update or not. I did some wrapping there just in case I turned off WebSockets on ColdFusion so that wouldn't generate an error. But you know, the WebSockets in ColdFusion is just a couple lines. It's not really the case on Angular. And the other thing I do want to mention is there's this whole other concept of state management in the Angular world. Building an app like that, would you be better off just going with NGRX as their state management library? Basically, it puts everything into a store. Data comes out through selectors, it goes in through actions, and the actions can have side effects. So that's something that just, you know, if you were planning out a massive app, you might want to start researching that ahead of time. Or if you have a small app that just, the services are really powerful, you might not need it all the time. Okay, I'm just going to hit a few topics and then we're out of here. Service worker and progressive web application are pretty, have a lot of support in Angular, again, because Google is a mobile oriented and the next billion users on crappy cell phone networks and around the world. Service worker is a network proxy that actually runs in the browser, so you can define how long you want your static access to hang around and how long to cache your API calls. It doesn't go all the way back. The support for it is just a few years old now, but there is that. And with that, you would have the app shell model of a progressive web app, where you build your app shell just in HTML and you push, as the person downloads that, and that part is cached on the client, and the content changes. But with a secondary visit, they already have the app shell on their phone, so they're not re-downloading that. And just, whatever functionality you ship to them, they still have. It doesn't require the network. There's something called Lighthouse Audit in Chrome that if you look in there, it will scan your app and tell you how well it behaves as a PWA. Right, native script. The other idea is if you're spending all this time in Angular, you also want to build your mobile app. I don't know, I've never gotten very far in it, but it is there. You can build a pretty full functioning app in JavaScript. This is what that would look like. The white parts here where you're able to reuse, and then the view.html is for the web, and the native script is for the app. It uses Flexbox CSS, and it's got its own tag system, names, and things like that. But you can see how this is kind of the same code. We've got this async piping here to do that. I do just have to have a copy of it. It really seems like if you know you're planning to do JavaScript and build a mobile app that React Native is a lot more popular. It seems to get a lot of attention. And I threw this slide in too after talking with some of you guys and listening to feedback last year. Server-side rendering, if you're on SEO, plan, if that's something that is important, you can actually run Angular on a Node server. Express is the server. It's just a few commands to get started in your engine project, and it would build out the whole app. And you would ship that to a website, and that's what, if a web crawler or somebody was coming for the first visit, they would get that initially, and then the interactive part would take over. And there's some modifications you have to make within your source code if you're going to do that. There's ways to correct that stuff. But for example, whatever URLs in your API, it can't be a relative API because the call is actually coming from your Node server to that API. So you have to have a switch in there somewhere about being a fully qualified URL. Whew, okay. They talk straight, huh? Okay, so in conclusion, it's a big learning curve. I threw a lot of stuff at you guys, and it's going to take time. I've been working for 2 years at least, and just starting to get comfortable with the React stuff. It's a brand new paradigm, but there's the potential to make really cool UIs. To have a UI be really responsive and have that sitting there with the throttle so that that you're not flooding your server while the user is sitting there typing. You can actually respond intelligently. But at the end of the day, you have to decide before you adopt something, commit to something. Is it just too much? Is it too sophisticated for me and for the organization that I work in? I think it's fun for projects and things like that. I can envision a really fast updating dashboard. And here, Google's influence, it's both a pro and a con. For me, when I'm on my phone or on the web, I'm using a Google app, which happens every day. I'm just always impressed by the quality of what they can do and the stuff they crank out. So, in a lot of ways, I do want to take all their best practices that are open source and try them. But then, on the other hand, I don't work at Google. Do I actually need the Cadillac solution? If you're happy, you've got something that works elsewhere. Okay, a few references there, and I'm done. I think I have a few minutes, now 3 minutes. Are there any questions right off the bat? I'm going to go over anything again? Oh, sure.
I got a question for you.
Oh, okay.
So when it's compiling and making all those files, do you ever get lost? Kind of like, oh my goodness, what did it just do? Like, just curious.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Okay.
The other thing is, there's live reload. So you make a change when you're in dev mode. You make a change and it instantly recompiles and pops back up and updates your browser. So there's a good dev flow there. The compiling, that step is when you're going live and you're actually creating assets to ship. The other thing though is that I'm doing 2 builds. I do a dev build and a prod build. Because the prod build is what I want my users to use because that's really fast. The dev build I have in a separate sub URL so that if something goes wrong, I can just switch to the dev URL, get the same application in dev mode, and probably replicate the bug and have the full console output.
So if it writes all that code for you, do you ever go in and modify what it wrote? You have to leave it as is?
Yeah, you only work in TypeScript.
Okay.
That's a great question. That's probably a whole talk in itself. Any other questions?
What are you using this Ajax code? Are you using Fetch or is Angular simply built in?
It's all built in. That's its own HTTP client.